From the nation's capital, Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. A weekly discussion about the federal issues most important to Nevada. And now, from Washington, D.C., here's Marilee Joyce.
And good day to you. I'm Marilee Joyce, and this is Eye on Washington. It's the only statewide Nevada news program produced in Washington, D.C. Every week, Eye on Washington takes you straight to Capitol Hill for a discussion with Nevada's delegation and other leaders about the federal matters that matter to you. Today's topic, he says, speeding up the mining permitting process would help end our dependence on foreign countries for needed metals and minerals. It's our update on one Nevada leader's ongoing push toward using our domestic resources for critical minerals production, and that leader, he is my guest today, Nevada U.S. Congressman Mark Amodei. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for the invite, Marilee.
A year ago this summer, Eye on Washington told you about President Trump's signing an executive order to reverse the nation's dependence on foreign imports of critical minerals. The president at the time called these minerals, quote, essential to American prosperity and national security. And today on Eye on Washington, we'll learn why so-called critical minerals are so critical to just about every part of your daily life. We'll find out the status of my guest's critical minerals bill and learn why he says it would make it easier for the mining of domestic mineral sources. And we'll learn his concern about the growing increase on our reliance on other countries for minerals we have right here in America. So let's first remind you of the Trump administration's comprehensive order focusing on domestic energy production. Its aims: identify new sources of critical minerals, ensure miners and producers have access to the best data, and streamline the leasing and permitting process to expedite production, reprocessing, and recycling of minerals at all levels of the supply chain. And if that doesn't sound like a priority, consider this. According to the Interior Department and the U.S. Geological Survey, the U.S. is fully, majorly, or partially dependent on foreign competitors and or adversaries for our supply of critical minerals. So, Congressman, a report from these two agencies identifies 23 of the minerals that are most needed to sustain our national defense and economy. And that's minerals used for everything from batteries, computer chips, equipment for our military. We need to stress again that a lot of the countries supplying these are adversaries, and that means those relationships could further sour, and that could threaten further our getting these minerals.
Well, you're choosing to be vulnerable to your competitors at best and adversaries at worst in these minerals that we have existing here in our country. And so it's not one of those things where one side of the argument is saying we should choose to be vulnerable, and the other side says you don't have to destroy the environment to extract these minerals, you know, in a responsible manner. So quite frankly, that's been the fight.
You know, we're going to explain in our next segment just how dependent we've become on these countries, and later in the bill later in the show we're going to talk about your bill and update us on that. But for now, I really wanted to let you expand on the underlying point of this whole thing about just the necessity of minerals. We need to take it from this rock in the ground to the minerals, you know, available across this country, hugely in the state of Nevada. They make everything you use every day, all day long.
Well, and it's like you've hit on a few of them. Cell phones, one of them is medical technology, so it's healthcare. Sure. Obviously, there's a Department of Defense applications and stuff like that. All the rare earths, which is just about anything that ends with the letters IUM, uranium, lithium, you know, strontium, all that sort of stuff. And so the challenge here is when you say, well, why are we not exploiting our own resources? There's a stereotype out that says, I don't care where it is, I don't know where it is, and I don't know what it is or how important it is. If you're extracting it, it's a bad thing. And it's like, listen, the bill doesn't say you must ignore that. It says if you should ignore it, then fine. But this bit where and you've got the list, we're 100% dependent on China for some fairly basic stuff. And it's because we've chosen to be instead of we must be. And it makes no sense.
You know, I'm going to tell our audience next segment just not only how dependent we are, but how much more dependent we've become on these countries over the years. It's amazing. But, you know, it's funny. I've done many mining shows, of course, over the years, many with you. And I always bring up a fun fact. I'm going to bring it up again. Mining is even dependent, or our Oreo cookie is even dependent on mining. It's titanium that gives the white color to the frosting. So we could be relying on adversaries one day for our Oreos. No, but seriously, they are called critical minerals because they are critical to the productivity of our daily life. It's not a...
Without them, those products don't exist.
That's it. And when we return, needier and needier our growing reliance on other countries for the minerals we need to work, play, and live. You might be shocked. We have details just ahead.
You're watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, brought to you by Caesars Entertainment, the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County, the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, NV Energy, Jim Marsh Automotive and Body Shop, the Rogich Communications Group, and Renown Health.
I have 3 tests next week. I'm going to be studying all weekend. Ugh. Are you studying tonight? We can meet up and study together. Oh yeah, that sounds good. What time? I work until 6. Okay, sounds good. Just text me after. Okay. No!
There is no text, tweet, or call that's worth a life.
One pedestrian death is one too many.
Look up.
And look out for each other.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
I got my own iPod Touch and used my dad's login to get on gambling sites. Poker is the best, but I'm losing a lot. Since I'm too young to play, they're not allowed to keep the money, and my dad won't find out. That's right, isn't it?
I am a nurse,
a firefighter, a college student,
a mother, and I am an American soldier.
I will always be ready
for every storm
and disaster that threatens my community.
I will always be there to protect my neighbors,
my family, and my country.
We are the Army National Guard.
We are the Army National Guard.
We are the Army National Guard.
Visit nationalguard.com to learn more about part-time service.
And welcome back to Eye on Washington, our look at one congressman's work to reduce this nation's dependence on foreign sources of critical minerals. And my guest today is that congressman. He is Nevada U.S. Congressman Mark Amodei. There are 23 minerals considered crucial to this nation's ability to sustain its national defense and economy. More than 20 of them can be found right there in the great state of Nevada. Critical minerals are used in manufacturing everything from batteries and computer chips to military and medical equipment. Gold, so much of which comes from Nevada, is even in your carpet fiber. You could not get by in this life without critical minerals. They are absolutely essential for economic growth, not to mention our national security. And so it's not good news to any American that this nation is becoming more, not less, dependent on foreign sources. The United States has vast mineral resources, but is becoming more and more dependent on foreign sources. 25 years ago, the U.S. was dependent on foreign sources for 45 non-fuel mineral materials. 8 of these imported materials fulfilled 100% of U.S. requirements for them. By 2015, that 45 had grown to 47. We were relying on others to provide, and 19 of those imports fulfilled 100% of the requirements for these mineral materials. So, Congressman, again, we're getting more dependent on foreign sources, not less.
Well, and the issue here, Marilee, is this. It's become easier to go get a permit and to operate in countries that don't have our labor laws, don't have our environmental laws, don't have our safety laws, all those things. So it's kind of ironic that the same people that say we must pay heed to the environment, we must be safe with our workers, we must do all those things, are then saying, so we're going to go 100% to people who, quite frankly, don't care about any of that stuff. The hypocrisy is unreported and manifest and strategically dumb.
And you've shared on this show many times your concern about our mining companies moving offices overseas or moving down south or et cetera.
Well, and the reality is quite frankly, nobody gets to be a hero by degrading the environment. So that whole stereotype of it's bad by virtue of the fact that it exists, ignores the whole track record of these folks in restoring habitats, many of them that were legacy things and stuff like that, as well as paying some of the highest average wages in the nation of any industry. Those people who have those jobs in Nevada are somewhere north of $80,000 a year in our rural areas predominantly, which quite frankly is a very important piece of the puzzle for environmentally responsible folks working in Nevada's rurals. It's a win-win.
I mentioned the importance of minerals in our military and national security, but just to kind of focus in for a moment on its effect on our economy. One, again, example of many. You were on recently with Lee Gibson, and we were talking about transportation. We complain about Nevada's and the nation's crumbling infrastructure. You need minerals for that. It's just, again, one of countless examples.
Well, and one of the things that some critics have says, oh my God, sand and gravel could be a critical mineral on this list. It's like, well, depending on the circumstances, if you have the Loma Prieta earthquake in the East Bay that collapsed those sections of freeway, and you need to rebuild that infrastructure lickety-split to get that emergency capacity back, guess what? It might be critical. And so, but it's like, listen, the bill doesn't require that they get a permit. If they're supposed to be told no, they will, but there's a time frame for it. And by the way, the process is still entirely transparent. So nobody's going to slip in a critical mineral permitting thing under something that isn't critical at the time.
You know, again, we have too many good examples to share, but you were talking about the environment. You know, everyone's talking about clean energy. According to the Department of Energy, the U.S. imports more than 50% of the 41 minerals key to clean energy applications.
Yeah. It's another irony where you're sitting there going, am I missing something? Please connect 50%. These dots. You know what I think some of it is, I won't speak for everybody, but the speculation is it's just a jihad against the minerals industry. And it's like, guess what? They don't make money by degrading the environment in these days. So some of the old legacy stories are fine. I mean, Virginia City, there's still all sorts of mercury in the Carson River. How do you clean it up in modern times? You solve those problems. But the people that are operating now, quite frankly, are some of the most responsible towards the environment of any industry on the face of the earth, and especially when you look at making yourself vulnerable to the folks that are your adversaries.
And again, to drive home the economic hit of all this, the U.S. share of worldwide mineral production dollars was 7% in 2015, down from 19% in the early 90s.
Hey, if you think that's okay, I simply disagree with you.
And again, minerals, it's a dog chasing its tail, right? Minerals are needed for economic growth to occur, but also those exploration dollars are dollars we'd have now if it wasn't going on elsewhere, right?
Well, and the irony is because of the ones that have been spent, you know that resource is in your neighborhood. We're just choosing not to go get it.
And when we return, the Congressman's years-long effort to develop domestic sources of minerals, where does it stand? We're going to tell you right after this.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. The only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Marilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
When you think RTC, what comes to mind? How about jobs? RTC road projects bring thousands of jobs to Washoe County, expanding and connecting northern Nevada, growing our local economy, providing a more secure future for our residents and their families. So when you think jobs, think RTC. Your RTC, the RTC of Washoe County.
The state of Nevada licenses and inspects a range of health facilities, from hospitals and nursing homes to surgery centers, halfway houses, treatment centers, and more. Inspection and complaint information are available free online at findahealthfacility.nv.gov. You can search for individual facilities or by facility type and by city or county. You should always choose a licensed healthcare facility to ensure the highest standards for provision of care. Again, to find licensing and inspection information, visit findahealthfacility.nv.gov.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
It's a big responsibility.
Oh, it's huge. I know, it's huge.
And the salary.
Oh my god, yes.
Right?
I mean, like, I was about to move in with my parents, and right before, so this saved me.
I really believe in you, you know?
Thank you. It's nice to hear that from someone.
These are cool. Did you, what did you...
Safety. We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions, and all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
And welcome back to Eye on Washington and our discussion of my guest's work to streamline production of critical minerals and reduce our reliance on foreign sources of fuel. We've been visiting with Nevada U.S. Congressman Mark Amodei. Well, if you knew of a certain activity could lead to more economic prosperity, better security, and everything from cleaner air to safer roads to tip-top health care, wouldn't you go out of your way to make it easy for that activity to be carried out? Well, sadly, the U.S. mining industry has not found that theory to be working well for it. In fact, my guest says overburdensome rules and regulations have hugely hindered Nevada's and this nation's other mining companies from producing the very minerals we are becoming more and more reliant on others to provide to us. And what are these rules and regulations impacting? Well, the 2014 ranking of countries for mining investment, which ranks 25 major mining countries, found that 7 to 10-year permitting delays are the most significant risk to mining projects in the United States. If it were up to Congressman Amodei, it would be a whole lot easier to mine for minerals here in this country. And in each of the past 3 Congresses, the House has passed his National Strategic and Critical Minerals Production Act. This legislation seeks to address delays in the permitting of American mining projects, which currently can take 7 to 10 years or even longer. The bill requires the Secretaries of Interior and Agriculture to more efficiently develop domestic sources of minerals considered critically and strategically important to the economic and national security of the United States. It requires deadlines to be set and adhered to. It tracks progress. It streamlines judicial review and litigation. And Congressman, it's almost a year to the date as we're taping this after President Trump announced his commitment to reduce our dependence on foreign sources of minerals, that you've reintroduced your bill. You've had the House in your corner the last 3 sessions. What's going on in the Senate?
Excellent question. No disrespect to Senator Murkowski, but it's her committee. And so I try not to speculate on why the Senate does or doesn't do what they do, and this is one of the examples where it's like, hey, quite frankly, if we missed something, if you've got a better mousetrap, but just dead silence is incredible.
Is it that it's not considered an urgency compared with, what could the opposition be to making it easier to stop relying on your adversaries to supply what you need to make your daily product?
Well, because one of the primary weapons over the last 20 years has become, if we draw it out long enough, they'll go away. Capital for mining projects is not something where you park it there for 10 years hoping you're going to get a yes. So the main objective of the bill is to say, not everybody's entitled to yes, but they are entitled to an answer within 3 years. So you go through that public process, the NEPA process, all that stuff, but you do it in 36 months and give them a yes or a no. And by the way, if you need a little more time, then both sides can agree to extend that by 6 months. So the big fallacies are, well, this is going to make it easier. It's like, no, it's going to make it a shorter process. None of the steps are omitted. And by the way, if you think it should be a no, then they've got their no. And instead of just, hey, can you hang around for 7 to 10 years? Because we're pretty sure you can't. And that way, we never have to put anybody on the record as deciding anything.
Help my audience understand the huge difference between the permitting process in this country versus in other countries.
Well, I'm not familiar with the other ones, except that I know that they don't have NEPA.
There's a reason mining companies are moving overseas.
They don't have the oversight. Of course, now they don't have the stability either. You get a yes here and you kind of know what you're doing, as opposed to some stuff we've experienced in South America where they say, hey, guess what? Your mine is now federal property. And you're going, excuse me? So, I mean, you've got that part in some parts of the world, but make no mistake, the other industrialized nations, the Chinas of the world, when you're talking about trade stuff, guess what? If that gets escalated and they say no more critical minerals, no more rare earths for the United States, it'll be an emergency. Be like, oh, it'll be amazing how we got to get those facilities open, comply with the environmental stuff. But I guess we really should supply our own minerals.
You know, I mentioned some of the details of the bill, which are often glossed over, but I think you consider pretty doggone important. One is setting deadlines, tracking progress, and adhering to these things. You know, we often hear about legislation. We don't hear about the follow-up or results, the importance of tracking progress.
Well, you know, there's an old saying, when you got the facts, you argue the facts. When you got the law, you argue the law. When you don't have either, you just argue. So the just argue folks are winning because they're able to just argue for close to a decade in many instances to where, quite frankly, as I said, it's like, listen, there are other places for that capital to go where it can make money. So investors aren't in the business of saying, we'll wait for you. It's like, hey, we've got something over here, we can put that money to work.
Yeah, quickly as we close out this segment, all of the mining companies in Nevada, the big companies, have their representatives here and offices here in Washington, D.C. I know you meet with these people often, in addition to the folks in Elko and the folks in Reno and Northern Nevada, et cetera. What do they say about the permitting process and the frustration?
Well, I can tell you they spend millions of dollars annually to hire people just to go through that process. And so it's like, listen, nobody's asking anybody to look the other way while they do something, but it's like we want some predictability to the process instead of, even though you do what we asked you to do and it took a year, here's what we want you to do next year. It's like, hey, if you want to talk about watersheds, then talk about it. If you want to talk about air sheds, talk about that. If you want to talk about wildlife, talk about that. But let's not string it out to the point where you're going, oh, you know what? I think we should talk about, yeah.
And when we return, how does the congressman help educate colleagues about the importance of mining? He'll tell us right after this.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. The only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Marilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
I got my own iPod Touch and used my dad's login to get on gambling sites. Poker is the best, but I'm losing a lot. Since I'm too young to play, they're not allowed to keep the money and my dad won't find out. That's right, isn't it?
Are you studying tonight? We can meet up and study together. Just text me after.
Okay. No!
There is no text, tweet, or call that's worth a life.
One pedestrian death is one too many.
Look up.
And look out for each other.
No one ever says you're a bad person if you have cancer, and no one says it's your fault for having autism. You're never to blame if you have Alzheimer's, so why should having an opioid addiction be any different? When we shame the sick, it keeps those with the illness from seeking treatment. Addiction is a disease, and it's up to us to stop the stigma. See how you can reduce the stigma at envyopioidresponse.org.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
And it is time for our closing segment of today's Eye on Washington. We've had as our guest, of course, Nevada U.S. Congressman Mark Amodei. Congressman, how do you use your position as the Vice Chairman of the Western Caucus to help educate your colleagues about the importance of mining, not just to Nevada, and not just to the West, but to the whole country?
Well, it's a good place to start, at least, because there's some pretty diverse membership there. You've got people from South Carolina, you've got people from Pennsylvania. So the stereotype of Western gold mine only, precious metal only, is not accurate there. So whether you're talking to people from Minnesota about the Iron Range, or coal in Pennsylvania, something like that, they've all got a reference point, and so it's a good place to do that. But nonetheless, it's always things that bear reminding people of in terms of the benefits, the wages, the environmental record of modern mining, and so it's stuff that you just got to do every day.
And it's a twofold plus, really, because it benefits those with mines and mining products and related in their own states. But if the economy of the nation is hurt by losing money from producing here and getting the resources and the minerals you need to make a pacemaker, to fix crumbling roads, etc., the whole nation suffers. So it's important to every member of Congress in every state.
Well, and then you've also got the balance of trade issue, where quite frankly, we've learned that in the petroleum industry, where you're not importing a bunch, you're now exporting. It's like, hey, that's a good thing when you're talking about overall general economy.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Agreed. Hope to have you on when an update on the bill. Let's get the Senate behind it, right?
Yep.
And that does wrap up today's Eye on Washington. And we hope you'll join us next week for another look at federal matters that matter most to you in Nevada. In the meantime, though, we are always here for you, providing all the federal news Nevadans need to know. Just go to our website, joycecommunications.com, and while you're there, check out all the federal issues that impact Nevada. You can like us on Facebook and follow me on Twitter, and catch up with any shows you may have missed on our YouTube page. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Marilee Joyce in Washington, D.C. Have a good day.
Thank you for watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce airs statewide in Nevada solely due to the generosity of our sponsors. Can your company help us continue our mission to remain Nevada's top source of federal news? If you can help us help Nevadans, please visit joycecommunications.com/WordPress/EOW sponsors and join us today. That's joycecommunications.com/WordPress/EOW sponsors.